האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening. Dobro V'Yetzer. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Vayakhel. We're going to do Os Daled, section 4. It's a short section, but one which is going to give us a very, very important eitzah, an important piece of advice about choosing a career or devoting ourselves to a career in our lives. Very, very fascinating. So let's start with two psukim from the Parsha. This is Perek Lamed Hey. Psukim Chav Hey and Chav Vav. The Torah here is talking about, it's actually talking about for a second time, the items that needed to be donated for the building of the Mishkan, for the construction of the portable temple in the Midbar, in the wilderness. And here it's talking about how the people were involved, not just in donating items, but in kind of preparing the items so that they could be used in the setting up, in the construction of the Mishkan. Pasuk Chaf He, V'chol isha chachmas leiv, and every woman who had a heart of wisdom, biyadeha tavu, with her hands she would spin. Vayaviu matve, and they would bring, these women who had this special skill, they would bring the spun yarn, es hatecheles, the blue wool, ves hargamon, and the purple wool, es tolas hashani, the scarlet wool, ves hashesh, and the linen yarn. V'chol hanoshim asher, this is the next pasuk, chavav. V'chol hanoshim asher nosa liban osana b'chachma, and all of the women whose hearts led them, or whose hearts lifted them with wisdom, tavu es ha'izim, they would spin the goats. Literally, that's translating the pasuk literally, tavu es ha'izim, they would spin the goats. The way the pasuk's generally translated is they would spin the goat hair. In other words, it was known from all the way back in Parshas Truma that certain kinds of fibers were needed, and we learned about back in Truman, repeated again here in Vayakhel, they needed a blue dyed wool, I should say bluish greenish, and a purplish type of dyed wool, and a scarlet type of dyed wool, and they also used sheish, linen, which of course comes from flax, not from wool. It's from a plant base. And then they used goat hair as well. So when it comes to the goat hair, the pasuk uses a different expression. It doesn't say isha chachmas leiv, women with a wise heart. Instead, it says v'chol hanoshim asher nosa liban osana b'chachma. All of the women whose hearts inspired them or lifted them with wisdom, tavu es ha'izim, they would spin the goat hair. So there was something unique about the process of working with the goat hair, and we're going to learn about that in this piece. Section Dalet, Os Dalet, section 4. Pasuk, the pasuk says, V'chol hanoshim, and all of the women asher nosan liban, that their hearts lifted them or led them, osana is them, bechachma, with wisdom. That, of course, is the second pasuk we just read a moment ago. V'chule, etc. Kosha, this is difficult. Shaharei im nosa liban osana, because if their hearts actually lifted them, mikre shehem birishus liban, then it should be considered that they are under the control of their hearts. V'zohi midas harashoyim, and this is considered a characteristic of wickedness, of wicked people. If the women were truly led by their hearts and controlled by their hearts, that is not considered a good quality. Ki de'isa b'Yalkut, as it states in the Medrash Yalkut Shimoni on Parshas Noach, al pasuk, on the pasuk, Vayomer Hashem el libo. The pasuk says that Hashem spoke to his heart, or spoke to himself, but it uses the expression Hashem said to his heart. And the Medrash comments on that. Hatzadikim libam birishusam. Righteous people, their hearts are in their control. V'harishayim, and wicked people, heim birishus libam. They are under the control of their hearts. So let's pause to understand the Zera Shimshon's question, but then also to take a moment to ponder this very, very interesting and important concept. So the Zera Shimshon's question is, the pasuk says that when it refers to the women who were preparing the goat hair to make it into threads, to make it into fabric, to use for the Mishkan, it uses a very unusual expression, which is nasa liba nosana. The women whose hearts lifted them or led them or inspired them b'chokhmah, with wisdom. So if it just said the women who had this special wisdom, or who were blessed with the special wisdom, or had developed the special wisdom, had learned the special wisdom, there would be no problem. But because the Torah uses a language of their heart, talks about their hearts, lifting them or directing them with wisdom, Zera Shimshon says, wait a minute, that doesn't sound so good. That could be problematic, because if a person is under the control of his or her heart, then the Medrash says that's a bad thing. That's a characteristic of evil people, as opposed to tzaddikim, righteous individuals. They control their heart. They don't let their heart control them. So that's the Zera Shimshon's question. But we need to step away for a moment to realize in modern society, the idea of a person being swayed by his or her heart is considered a very positive thing. We're told, listen to your heart, follow your heart. He did or she did what his or her heart told him he needed to do or she needed to do. Suddenly along comes the Medrash Yalkut Shimoni, brought down here in the Zera Shimshon, telling us, what are you saying? Listen to your heart, follow your heart. No, you need to control your heart. You should be controlling your emotions, not your emotions controlling you. So that's a subtext here, especially in light of kind of modern society, the assumptions of modern society, and we'll circle back to that later in this short piece. Next paragraph. V'yesh lomar, and we can say, meaning to answer this question, we can say, Shahanoshim efshar sheyihiyeh libon birishusan. For women, it's not really possible for their hearts to be completely under their control. Shaharei rishus acherem alehem, because the authority of others is upon them. And you can see that's based on a Gemara in Maseches Kiddushin. The Gemara over there is talking about the fact that when a girl is young, she's under the control of her parents, of her father specifically. And then when she gets married, she's under the control to a certain degree of her husband. So if a woman is early on under the control of her parents, of her father, and later on under the control of her husband, so then the idea that a woman should be taking control of her own heart is not as easy to say, is not as easy to propose as it is for a man. So that's why Zera Shimshon, that's his first step in answering this question as to why we seem to be saying it's okay for these women to be led by their hearts of wisdom. Umitam ze eino nami birishus libon. And for the same reason, they are not controlled by their hearts. She'im tavor al das Moshe v'Yehudis. If a woman follows her heart, right? Her heart tells her to go and be with a certain man. She has romantic notions, romantic ideas. If she does that, and through doing that, she violates the expectations, the religious expectations that have come down to us from Moshe, the Yehudis, and the expectations of a good Jewish woman, Teitse mi bala, then she will be forced, she'll be compelled by halacha, by Jewish law, to leave her husband, visafsi ksubasa, and she will lose her ksuba. V'lo timsa misha yisa'ena, and she will not be able to find someone else to marry her. So if, God forbid, a married Jewish woman follows her heart and it leads her astray, and God forbid she has an affair with another man, terrible, terrible things result. She's compelled by halacha, even if she regrets it terribly and wants to return to her family, the halacha doesn't allow her to return to her husband after she's violated the sanctity of marriage and she's committed adultery. She can't return to her husband. She loses the ksuba, and in an appropriate Jewish society and religious framework, no one else is going to be interested in marrying her. V'tav lemesav tandu, and it is better from a woman's perspective to be with another person, meaning to be married and be with a husband, milemesav armalu, more than to be alone. This is a quote from a Gemara, as you can see in the parentheses from Yevamos. It's also a Gemara that's brought down in Maseches Kiddushin, famous statement by Chazal, which is that a woman generally prefers to be married rather than to be alone. At least that was true historically. Ve'ein l'chak sheira banashim, and the Gemara also says that there is no higher level to be considered a proper Jewish wife, ella, but, next paragraph, next page, column on the right, ha'oser ritzon bala, but a woman who follows the wishes of her husband. The highest level of faithfulness that a woman can aspire to is loyalty to her husband, and that each of them should support each other and take care of each other, and that the woman should be showing that she wants to make sure her husband is happy with her actions. This is considered Isha Kshera, a proper Jewish woman. So therefore, Zera Shimshon is telling us that the idea in the Torah here in Parshas Vayakhel, the words that talk about a woman whose heart is leading her in a wise way, it doesn't mean, God forbid, that her heart is leading her astray. Such a thing would have terrible consequences. That's not what the Torah is talking about. The Torah is talking about something very positive here, as the Zera Shimshon goes on to explain in the next paragraph. Aval Khan, but here, Hakosav Maire, the Torah is talking about Beumanus Hatzricha Chochma Yisera. It's talking about a skill that requires extraordinary wisdom. Kemoshe Perish Rashi al Pasuk Zeh. As Rashi explains on this pasuk, Rashi tells us that when it says they spun the goats, it doesn't mean they would shear the goat hair, they would cut the goat hair off the goats as we would expect, as is normally done, and then they would spin it and then they would weave it. It doesn't mean that. It means that they had a special skill of spinning the goat hair while it was still attached to the goats. V'limud umanus kimozo, and to learn a skill like this, to learn such a specialized high-level skill, eino toloi b'ritzon ha'adam, it's not dependent upon the will of the person. It's not just based on how much a person wants to be able to learn this skill. Leshabe libo ve'atzmo lekach, to dedicate his heart and himself to this. Most skills are dependent upon how the level of dedication of the person who wants to learn the skill. If the man or the woman who's trying to learn the skill is dedicated enough and perseveres and is persistent and doesn't give up, then they'll learn the skill. But that's not the case here. The dilma lo yale biyado. This skill was so difficult, so rare and unique that even if a person totally dedicated himself or herself to learn it, perhaps they would not be successful. Lefisha ein lo bitiv'o, because it's not in this person's nature, ha'imun yodayim hatzorich, the skilled hands that would be necessary for this. It's simply a case of a person not having the natural talent and ability to be able to do it. If a person doesn't start with that natural ability and that manual dexterity, then it's, no matter how much time and effort they put into it, they might not be successful. Ve'afilu sheyeh libo birushuso, even if a person completely controls his heart and totally dedicates himself to learning a skill like this, lo yoil klum, it won't necessarily be effective at all. Aval, however, im halev yisaenu, if a person's heart inspires them lilmod umanos zo, to learn this skill, this craft, shema mina, then we learn from this, shehu muchan betivo lilomdo, that this person has been prepared by his very nature, lilomdo, to learn it. Im yirtze litroach, if he is then, in addition to having the natural inclination, then if he's willing to invest all the hard work and effort, then he can be successful. Ve'al zeh omar hakosov, and this is what the pasuk was talking about when it said, V'chol hanoshim asher nosa libon, all of the women whose hearts lifted them. It meant not that their hearts were controlling them, but that to be successful in learning this skill, their hearts had to already be inspiring them, and they need to demonstrate that they already had a feel, so to speak, for this type of work, this type of craft, and then they could devote tremendous time and energy into it and then be successful and learn how to do it. So the Zera Shimshon here, in addition to helping us understand the pasuk and answering his original question about why is the Torah seeming to say it's a good thing that they were inspired and led by their hearts, when sometimes that can be a very bad thing if a person is not in control of his emotions, and his emotions or her emotions control the person, that can be a bad thing. So the Zera Shimshon has explained that this pasuk is talking about a whole different thing, but it's very much a lesson in life that in certain areas, a person really only has a good chance to be successful if there is some kind of internal motivation and drive towards a certain area, towards a certain field, and even more than that, a certain innate skill and basic ability in the area. If not, then it's possible that the person could devote tremendous time and energy to learning a certain skill or pursuing a certain field, and ultimately not be successful. Like the Zera Shimshon says, lo yoel klum, it's possible for all of the hard work and effort not to be effective at all if the person isn't truly motivated to pursue this skill in this field and to learn it, and also not just motivated, but have a certain dexterity, have a certain innate kind of innate set of abilities to be able to be successful in this particular area. Now, obviously, not everything in life is as challenging as spinning goat hair while it's still on the goat, which apparently is an incredibly difficult thing to do and requires a tremendously high level of specific skills. Not everything in life is like that, but certainly we can think of other areas and other things where maybe ourselves or maybe someone else try to accomplish something and try to learn a certain skill or area and failed. And Zera Shimshon is saying a person in that situation shouldn't really blame himself or herself. Perhaps they just didn't have the innate qualities, innate talents, I should say, and the real internal motivation to be able to be successful. And then hopefully they switched to something else and found greater success. But it is an important lesson, certainly if we're talking to our children about pursuits in life, if we're guiding ourselves, if we're guiding students, it's an important thing to remember and to keep in mind. Yasher Koch for joining in the learning this week of this short but impactful piece in the Zera Shimshon. We look forward to learning again, God willing, next week together in the Zera Shimshon on next week's Parsha.